"He was the love of my life," Hawkins said to his daughter Sophie, while tears streamed from his eyes. "He was my world, my soulmate. I never had the courage to tell anyone before, but I want you to know the truth." Sophie listened with wide eyes as her father told her about the love of his life for the first time. He never mentioned before. How they met, how they fell in love, and how they were forced apart. He told her about the secret they had to keep, the pain of separation, and the love that never died. Once, in a big city called Washington, D.C., there lived two young men whose hearts were about to be forever changed. The year was 1952, and the world was very different from how it is today. People often didn't understand that love can come in many forms, and some kinds of love had to be kept secret. Our story begins with Hawkins Fuller, a handsome man with dark hair and eyes as blue as the summer sky. Hawkins worked for the government and was very good at his job. He was smart and charming, but he had a secret that he kept locked away in his heart. Then there was Tim Laughlin, a kind young man with dreams as big as the ocean. Tim had just moved to the city, hoping to make the world a better place. He had warm brown eyes that sparkled when he smiled, and a heart full of hope. Their story began on a beautiful autumn day. The leaves were turning golden and red, and a cool breeze was blowing through the city. Tim was walking down the street, arms full of books and papers, when he accidentally bumped into someone. "Oh no, I'm so sorry," Tim cried as his papers flew everywhere. A strong hand reached out to help him. "Don't worry about it," a deep voice said. "Let me help you." Tim looked up and found himself staring into the most beautiful blue eyes he had ever seen. It was Hawkins, and in that moment, something magical happened. It was like a spark of electricity passed between them, making their hearts beat a little faster. "I'm Hawkins," the handsome stranger said, smiling. "Hawkins Fuller?" "Tim Laughlin," Tim replied, taking Hawkins' hand. The touch sent a shiver down his spine. From that day on, Tim and Hawkins began to see each other more often. They'd meet for coffee, take walks in the park, and talk for hours about their dreams and hopes for the future. Each time they met, they felt a special connection growing between them. But this was a time when two men couldn't be in love openly. People thought it was wrong, and it could even be dangerous. So Tim and Hawkins had to keep their feelings a secret. One evening, as the sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in beautiful shades of orange and pink, Hawkins took Tim to a hidden spot in a quiet park. The trees were tall and old, their branches reaching up to the sky like they were trying to touch the stars. "I've never shown anyone this place before," Hawkins said softly, leading Tim to a secluded march. Tim's heart was beating so fast he thought it might jump out of his chest. "It's beautiful," he whispered, looking around in awe. As they sat together, watching the sky turn from orange to deep purple, Tim turned to Hawkins. "Hawkins," he said, his voice shaking a little. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Hawkins felt a pang in his heart. What Tim is dreaming, could impossible. He knew where they are living in society, and the people around them will never gonna accept them for who they are. However, he also knows that what he felt about Tim is different than he had ever felt with anyone before. Also, he doesn't want to give it a name. So without rejecting Tim, he took his face in his hand. "Tim, don't you think what we have now is more than beautiful? Let's not give it a name and ruin the moment. I like you, more than I have liked anyone," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Tim just nodded, knowing the reason behind Hawkins' answer. But he wanted to hear just once from Hawkins that he loves him. Hawkins understood what Tim was thinking. He couldn't tell him that, but he can show that with his actions. Slowly, Hawkins pulled Tim towards him, and their lips met in a soft, sweet kiss. It was like fireworks exploding, stars aligning, and the whole world fading away until it was just the two of them. For a while, Tim and Hawkins were happier than they had ever been. They would meet in secret, sharing quiet dinners, long talks, and stolen kisses. Each moment together was precious, like a beautiful treasure they had to keep hidden from the world. But their happiness was not to last. One day, the government announced that they were going to start looking for people who loved others of the same gender. They said these people were dangerous and shouldn't be allowed to work for the government or even live in society. Tim and Hawkins were terrified. They knew that if anyone found out about them, they could lose everything: their jobs, their friends, maybe even their freedom. With heavy hearts, they decided they had to separate to keep each other safe. The night they said goodbye was the hardest of their lives. "I'll never forget you, Tim," Hawkins said, tears in his eyes. "You'll always have a special place in my heart." Tim could barely speak through his tears. "I'll love you forever, Hawkins, no matter what happens." They shared one last kiss, pouring all their love and sadness into it, before going their separate ways. Years passed, and life went on. Hawkins, feeling pressure from his family and society, married a woman from a well-known family. Her name was Emily. She was kind and beautiful. They had a daughter named Sophie, who brought joy into Hawkins' life. But deep down, he never forgot Tim. Every year, on the day of their anniversary when he and Tim first met, Hawkins would visit their special spot in the park. He would sit on the old marsh, close his eyes, and remember the love that had shaped his life. As he sat there, Hawkins could almost feel Tim beside him, their love as strong as ever, transcending time and space, and he would whisper to the wind, "I loved you," as the wind could deliver this message to Tim. Tim, on the other hand, decided to fight for change. He started working with groups that wanted to help people like him and Hawkins. He wanted to create a world where no one had to hide who they are or whom they loved. One day, many years later, Hawkins was reading a very important document from the government while sitting in his office, and one word caught him off guard: Tim Laughlin. As he read, Tim was sentenced to 3 years prison for his protest against the government to give rights to the LGBTQ+ community, and the documents could only be passed after Hawkins signed them. There, the past emotions which were buried inside for all these years came on the surface, taking Hawkins with it. That time, he forgot what is right and what is wrong. The only thing he knows is to save the love of his life. Anyhow, he found Tim before the police could, and locked him up in the same tent house at the outskirts of the city, their old hiding place, where they used to meet secretly when they had an affair, and made sure no one could find out about Tim. The moment their eyes met, all the old feelings came rushing back. "Hawkins," Tim said, his voice filled with surprise and emotion. "Tim," Hawkins replied, his heart racing. "It's been so long. How are you, my love?" He used to call that to Tim when they were alone. But it's been years since he called him that. Their eyes filled with thousands of emotions. It could be seen from those eyes how hard it's been longing for, to see each other again. But lips were sealed by the society and their responsibility. When they both came forward to embrace each other in their arms, at that very moment, they realized that their love for each other had never really gone away. It had just been hiding, like a flower waiting for the sun to come out again. But things are complicated now. Hawkins was married with a family, and Tim had dedicated his life to fighting for equality. They knew they couldn't be together the way they wanted to. "I'm sorry, Tim," Hawkins said, his voice filled with regret. "I wish things could be different." Tim smiled sadly. "I understand, Hawkins. I'm just glad I got to see you again. But you know that. You can't lock me here forever. I have to go." Hawkins nodded. "But let me protect you for one last time, my love. It's not safe for you to go anywhere." He bagged Tim. But Tim knows what he is doing. He knows staying here with Hawkins won't be good. Not for them, but for his family as well. They parted ways once more, with the promise to never contact each other again. But this time, the goodbye felt different. It was filled with unspoken words and dreams of what could have been. From that day on, Hawkins lived his life differently. He started funding organizations that helped LGBTQ+ youth, but secretly. He helped Tim in all the way he could, staying as the government agent. Time continued to pass. Tim threw himself into his work, helping others and fighting for a better world. But he never forgot Hawkins. On quiet nights, he would look up at the stars and remember the love they had shared. Hawkins lived his life with his family, trying to be a good husband and father. But there was always a part of his heart that belonged to Tim. Many years later, when Tim and Hawkins were old men with gray hair and wrinkles that told stories of a life well lived, Tim got very sick. He had a disease called cancer. That time, there was no cure for it. The only cure was death, from the extreme pain the body goes through. As Tim lay in his hospital bed, getting weaker day by day, he had one last wish. He wanted to see Hawkins one last time. He wanted to embrace him in his arms, kiss him to his lips. He wants to get mesmerized by those two blue, deep, oceanic eyes. Tim's friend, who knew about his and Hawkins' past, managed to get a message to Hawkins. When Hawkins got the news, he felt his heart breaking all over again. Without hesitation, Hawkins rushed to the hospital. But life can be cruel sometimes, and by the time Hawkins arrived, Tim had already passed away. Heartbroken, Hawkins sat by Tim's bedside, holding his hand one last time. A nurse came in and handed Hawkins a letter. "He left this for you," she said softly. With shaking hands, Hawkins opened the letter and read Tim's last words. "My love, I wish you could hear these words from me, not through this letter. Since you are reading this, I must have gone. As I write this, I know my time is short, but my heart is full with our memories. I wanted you to know that I have loved you every day since we first met till my last breath. No matter where I was or what I was doing, you were always there with me. In every quiet moment, in every dream of what could have been. I don't regret the path I took. I just wished we could spend some more time together, holding our hands, going on long walks. Fighting for equality gave my life a meaning, and I hope I've helped make the world a little better. I hope you found happiness, my life. You deserve all the love in the world. Please know that you were loved, completely and unconditionally, by me. I loved you then, I love you now, and I will love you always. Don't cry. Just think that I have found peace in my life. I am sleeping soundly with your dreams. Let's meet again in our next life. And love each other deeply. Yours forever, Tim." Tears streamed down Hawkins's face as he read the letter. All the love, all the memories, all the what-ifs came flooding back. At that moment, Hawkins made a decision. He couldn't change the past, but he could honor Tim's memory by living his truth. When Hawkins returned home, he sat down with his daughter Sophie, who was now a grown woman. With a deep breath, he began to tell her the story of Tim and Hawkins, about the greatest love of his life, which he never shared with anyone. After listening to the story, Sophie reached out and took her father's hand. "Oh, Dad," she said, her voice full of love and understanding. "Thank you for telling me. I'm so sorry you had to hide this for so long." Hawkins smiled through his tears. "I'm just sorry I didn't have the courage to live my truth earlier. But I hope that by telling you now, I can honor Tim's memory and all he fought for." But Hawkins couldn't live long after losing his love of life. He was breathing all these years knowing that Tim was breathing as well somewhere in the world. As Tim was gone, he started losing his breath. One night, holding all the past memories in his hand, he slept soundly. The dreams and the memories were so deep that no one was able to make him wake up the next morning. Hope he also found the peace he was looking for. So, dear listeners, maybe Hawkins and Tim found their love in some other world that they could not get in this world. But story reminds us that love comes in many forms, and that all love is beautiful and worthy of respect. It teaches us about the importance of acceptance, the power of perseverance, and the strength of the human heart. Tim and Hawkins' story may have been filled with sadness and struggle, but it was also a story of deep love, unwavering commitment, and the hope for a better future. Their love, though hidden, helped pave the way for a world where everyone can love freely and openly. So remember, dear friends, to always be kind, to accept others for who they are, and to never be afraid to love with all your heart. Because in the end, love is what makes life beautiful, no matter what form it takes. And who knows? Maybe one day, you'll help create a world where no one has to hide who they are or who they love. A world where every love story can be told proudly and openly,